In conservation, there's an unsettling term that is becoming more commonplace as the world rapidly loses more and more species to extinction. That word, endling, refers to the last member of a dying species. Martha, the last passenger pigeon, died in 1914 in the Cincinnati Zoo. Benjamin, the Tasmanian tiger endling, died in the Hobart Zoo in 1936 after its handlers accidentally left him outside his enclosure, and he froze to death. The concept of an endling isn't just terrifying because it's the final member of a species, but it's the helplessness and guilt we feel as we watch a branch of the tree of life burn out in real time. Whether male or female, the final member of a species has no one to mate with and has no way of producing any offspring. There have been certain attempts with crossbreeding with similar species, but for the most part, as an endling nears its death, so too does an entire species. As humans, there's little we can do except care for the endling and attempt unlikely crossbreeding techniques. That is, if we're fortunate to have the endling in captivity, or to even know that a species is on the brink of extinction. For most flora and fauna, we don't know they're gone until a long period of biological silence concludes our worst fears. In a way, those under the careful eyes of humans are lucky to get the attention they do, even if any last-ditch species-saving attempts are in vain. A couple months ago, I was reading an article called No Heart, No Moon by Matt Jones, and I was struck not only by his writing style, but by the focus of his essay. The dusky seaside sparrow. The bird's history is tied to the idea of an endling and calls to mind what being the last member of your species truly means. I've linked the article in the description and highly recommend you read it. The dusky sparrow, smaller than a human hand, is characterized separately from other seaside sparrows due to its dark coloration and unique song. Other than that, there's nothing particularly interesting about the bird. To the regular, untrained eye, it just looks like every other kind of bird. Ornithologists have observed that the dusky seaside sparrow enjoyed a somewhat limited range. It hunted and nested around the same area for its entire life. It wasn't a migratory species and was found almost exclusively on North Merritt Island in Florida. These birds favored cordgrass for nesting, which is typically only found 10 to 15 feet above sea level. Because cordgrass only grows in certain moisture environments, the dusky sparrow was limited to that same range. While other birds are widespread or at least adaptable, the dusky seaside sparrow was neither of these. It had an extremely limited habitat, and that habitat was in prime real estate in Florida, so much so that NASA purchased most of North Merritt Island in 1961 to build their newly funded launch site as the space race picked up steam. A couple years later, Walt Disney bought 30,000 acres of Florida swampland, which eventually became Walt Disney World Resort 10 years later, located a mere 50 miles west of North Merritt Island. The bustling world of urbanization was slowly closing around the dusky sparrows. With NASA's launch site on the island, the agency sent their Saturn V rocket to space, successfully landing Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. While the Soviet Union was the first to achieve most of the vital successes in space, it was the landing on the moon that cemented the US as winners of the space race. This focus on reaching the moon and fostering national pride certainly helped the US, but it inevitably hurt the dusky seaside sparrow. Throughout the 1960s, scientists had noticed a sharp decrease in the sparrows as they lost their habitat. It was a cruel and ironic twist of fate that, when Armstrong and Aldrin landed on the moon, Armstrong said that the Eagle, their lunar module, had landed. While that ship, named after a mighty and charismatic bird, reached success, it paralleled the downfall of a small and unknown bird tucked away in Florida's marshes. Luckily for the sparrow, the federal government created the St. John's National Wildlife Refuge, home to the only remaining dusky seaside sparrow population, as the North Merritt Island population sputtered out of existence. To me, the fact that the lunar module was called the Eagle is telling. It's a patriotic symbol with good reason. The bird has an iconic, fierce look. It's an admirable hunter and holds a place in the American psyche. The dusky seaside sparrow isn't any of that. A lunar module named the dusky seaside sparrow wouldn't carry the profound impact of one named the Eagle. In conservation, it's something that scientists and activists have difficulty overcoming when it comes to little-known species around the world that are on the brink of extinction. It's why we want to save the polar bears and California condors, but almost none of us have heard of the Vegas Valley leopard frog or Gough's pocket gopher, even though both existed within the last 100 years in North America, but have since gone extinct. In conservation, there's a phrase thrown around that reveals the brutal reality of saving a dying species. Invisibility is extinction. If people don't have a reason to care for a species, they probably won't. Most of the time, the species that get the resources needed to save them are the ones that are bigger and have iconic looks. In the world of conservation, these types of species are often called charismatic species. They garner some attention from the public that, optimistically, gives them a chance at survival. The California condor is a great example since its commanding presence drew the admiration of many Americans. Its visibility, at least before its decline, gave people the opportunity to know and care about what they were trying to save. This led to the multi-million-dollar effort in saving the species from extinction. Lucky for the species, it was charismatic enough, but like I said earlier, most aren't so lucky. This idea of charismatic species versus non-charismatic ones brings up an uncomfortable dilemma in conservation. Even if a species could be saved with maximum human effort, it may not be realistic to save them if that maximum effort cannot be achieved. In other words, we could be capable of saving a species from extinction, but without public support and funding, it's unrealistic to even try. Therefore, it would be a waste to save a species doomed to die anyway, and instead divert those funds and efforts to a charismatic species that has a chance and public favor on its side. As cruel as it seems, these are the conditions that conservationists have to wrestle with. It may be better to save a select few species with a lot of money rather than to attempt to save as many as possible with less money for each project. Even though humans are most certainly the cause, directly or indirectly, of so many species extinctions, it is also our calculus that determines who lives and who dies. It's a harsh reality. As for the dusky seaside sparrow, it falls into this unnervingly large category of non-charismatic species. Its invisibility from the public eye, due to its limited habitat and unassuming looks, makes it hard for people to care about another ordinary bird. So where does that leave the dusky seaside sparrow? Well, it would be wrong of me to tell you that NASA operating on North Merritt Island was the sole reason for the dusky sparrow's decline. There were a variety of reasons, with NASA only being the final one. In 1946, the insecticide DDT was dropped on North Merritt Island. When the mosquitoes became resistant to DDT, even more aggressive insecticides were dropped. Paris green, used to kill rats, was sprayed over the nearby dikes. These chemical invasions led to direct and indirect poisoning, eggshell thinnings, and reproductive issues. In 1963, a railroad went up north of the island. The SR 528 expressway was built from the coast to Disney World. Invasive species like snakes and red-winged blackbirds pushed into the sparrow's habitat. Gradually, their home shrunk and their population along with it. NASA wasn't the sole cause, but was instead a part of an extensive network of gradual blows to the dusky sparrow population. I would tell you that there's a sliver of hope for the dusky sparrow. I would give you organizations to donate to and give you resources to learn about this relatively obscure bird. I would tell you where you can see the dusky sparrow and how you can help its species. But the sad reality is that the dusky sparrow went extinct over 30 years ago. Once the dwindling population at the St. John's Refuge dropped to 6, scientists took the remaining sparrows to a facility in Disney World. The only issue? All 6 survivors were male. This would require a moonshot crossbreeding program with the genetically similar Scott's seaside sparrow. Within several years, only one original dusky seaside sparrow, named Orange Band, remained along with a 87.5% female hybrid. Orange Band failed to mate with this hybrid, but was able to mate with another Scott's sparrow to produce a second 87.5% female. Shortly after her birth, however, her neck caught in the cage and snapped. At this point, in 1987, Orange Band was 14 and nearing death. He was the dusky seaside sparrow's endling, and his caretakers could do nothing but pamper him until his death. That came on June 17, 1987, as Orange Band and his entire species ceased to exist. Ironically, and perhaps fittingly, his death happened in the heart of Disney World. Outside of ornithologists and bird enthusiasts, people have probably never heard of the dusky seaside sparrow, and that was a big part of its downfall. Sure, the primary driving factor was the development of nearby facilities and the urbanization of its habitat, but even that is preventable if we cared about it. That being said, I understand on some level why we didn't care. After all, how can we care for something that most of us never knew existed? Just like the general rule of conservation, the dusky sparrow's invisibility was its extinction. The bald eagle is the symbol of the US and represents freedom and pride. The California condor is massive and commanding. The dusky sparrow is just a little-known bird, or was just a little-known bird. Now all that remains of the dusky sparrow is its name in an ever-growing list of extinct species and faded photos in outdated bird books. At least its name gets to be on the list, and at least we, or a few of us, knew it existed at all. Other species may disappear without us ever knowing they existed. But it feels wrong to call the dusky sparrow lucky. Perhaps its story can serve as a cautionary tale that tells us that there's more to conserve than just charismatic species. Yet, even in conservation, you have to balance budget and reality when deciding which species should be saved and which cannot. There are traits the dusky seaside sparrow had that we can admire. Its reluctance to give up its home, its unique song, its dedication to its flock. On some level, it is admirable. But it's too late to act on any lingering admiration for the dusky sparrow. It's gone forever. When its endling died, so too did an entire species.